Why are Americans moving out of Portugal? I don't know if you have ever heard someone say, Portugal is a dream destination. Well, it is true for so many. This small European country has lots of golden beaches, sunny weather, incredible food, and an overall high quality of life that many people envy. But here's the thing, while some are packing their bags to move to Portugal, others are moving out. Particularly, Americans are packing their bags and leaving. Yes, you heard that right. Americans are leaving the country that many consider a paradise. But why? Why would anyone walk away from the pastel-painted streets of Lisbon, the vineyards of Douro, or the rugged cliffs of the Algarve? And more specifically, why are Americans saying goodbye to this Mediterranean gem of a place? Well, that is exactly what we will talk about in this video. First, let's get one thing straight. Portugal is a fantastic place to live for many reasons. The cost of living is significantly lower than in the United States. Healthcare is affordable and accessible, and the lifestyle is slower and more relaxed. Plus, it's incredibly picturesque. If you are coming from the hustle lifestyle of New York City or the sprawl of Los Angeles, Portugal can feel like stepping into a fairy tale land. Yet, as idyllic as it may seem, there is another side to it. One that's prompting some Americans to say, this is not it for me. And honestly, it's not just about Portugal, it's about expectations versus reality, personal circumstances, and the complexities of living abroad in general. With that said, let's now look at 8 reasons Americans are leaving Portugal. Number 1. The cost of living. Not so cheap after all. When Americans think of Portugal, many envision an affordable paradise. And yes, in many ways, Portugal is less expensive than the United States. However, over the past few years, the influx of expats, including many Americans, has driven up prices, especially in cities like Lisbon and Porto. Rent in Lisbon has skyrocketed, and in some areas it's comparable to mid-tier cities in the United States. Imagine moving to Portugal for financial relief, only to find that your budget stretches just as thin as it did back home, especially if you are relying on the wages from Portugal. Take rent, for instance. The average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the city center of Lisbon, the capital city of Portugal, is around 1,200 euros. Comparing that to Washington, D.C., where the same type of apartment costs about $2,280 per month. At first, Lisbon seems like the clear winner. Renting in the Portuguese capital is nearly half the price, right? But wait till you hear what minimum wage is. In Portugal, the national minimum wage is 870 euros per month and around 5.4 euros per hour. Yes, that's right, 870 euros to cover rent, utilities, food, transportation, and everything else. While in Washington, D.C., the minimum wage is a whopping $17 per hour, translating to around $2,720 per month. Clearly, for those Americans who love city life, living in Lisbon, rent can swallow up their entire paycheck. While in D.C., even with higher rent, there's still room to save or at least room to cover other monthly bills. Unfortunately, this is the harsh reality for so many Americans who move to Portugal for affordability and are also not willing to compromise on city life, and thus, the reason they are moving back. So unless you're earning in dollars/abroad or have substantial savings, living comfortably in Portugal's main cities can be a challenge. However, this should not discourage you from moving to Portugal if you still want to, because renting in smaller cities that are even just 45 minutes away from the main cities, like Lisbon or Porto, can go as low as $700 per month for similar and in some cases, and even bigger apartments. That is about half the price compared to Lisbon. Let's take Santarém for instance, which is less than 45 minutes from Lisbon city center, with apartments of the same type. You can find them renting anywhere from 550 to 800 euros. Number 2. Portugal's administrative and paperwork bureaucracy. Literally, Portugal will teach and test your patience on this. Yes, we know that when you move abroad, navigating the foreign system can be, well, frustrating. Portugal is no exception. From obtaining residency permits to setting up utilities, the process can be slow. Portuguese people are very laid-back people, I must say, and they take this attitude to work as well. They are not in a rush to process anything for you. They don't joke with their lunch, coffee break, or dinner. In fact, their playtime is more important than anything in this wide world. So, for Americans who are used to more streamlined administrative services back home, or at least a faster system, this can feel like a major roadblock. Imagine waiting months for paperwork to process, or spending hours at government offices without clear instructions. Not to mention the fact that if you want to process any administrative work, you have to block out the whole day for that. There is nothing like, let me breeze in and out or I'll do it within 2 or 3 hours of the day. It's the whole day or nothing. That dream of a simpler life quickly feels less simple when you're stuck in a maze of administrative hurdles. Number 3. Language barriers. Yes, it is true that many Portuguese people speak English, especially in urban areas, but outside of those hubs, it's a different story. The official language is Portuguese, and while it's beautiful, it's also notoriously tricky and difficult to learn. Portuguese people say it is complicado, difícil de aprender. The language is simply not that easy to learn. Now, for Americans who don't invest time and effort into learning the language, then simple tasks like grocery shopping, visiting the doctor, or dealing with the tax office or authority can become really daunting. Also, the language barriers can make it harder to integrate into local communities in general, which can leave one feeling like an outsider. And over time, this feeling can wear on anyone's sense of belonging and make you want to move back to where you feel like you belong. Four, cultural adjustments. Every country has its own pace of life and cultural nuances, and Portugal is no exception. Here, people value slow living, long lunches, and plenty of socializing. While that sounds idyllic, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Americans coming from a fast-paced culture may initially enjoy the change but later find it hard to adjust. Things happen slower in Portugal. Businesses might close for hours in the middle of the day, punctuality isn't as rigid, and work culture prioritizes balance over hustle. While this can be refreshing, it can also be frustrating for those accustomed to America's efficiency and goal-driven mindset. Number 5. Weather expectations versus reality. The weather. Portugal is often marketed as sunny and warm, and for most of the year it is sunny and warm, but not everywhere and not all the time. Northern Portugal, for instance, can be rainy and damp, particularly in winter. Even Lisbon gets chilly and humid in the colder months, and central heating isn't a given in Portuguese homes. In general, Portuguese homes are not built for the winter. They are built for the summer. So your house or apartment can be very cold while it is warm outside. For Americans who move expecting eternal sunshine, the reality of cold, damp winters can come as an unpleasant surprise, and is one reason why some Americans move back. Number 6. Healthcare is affordable but different. Portugal's healthcare system is one of its biggest draws. It's accessible and inexpensive compared to the US. However, it's not perfect. Public hospitals can have long waiting times, and the approach to medicine might feel different from what Americans are used to. For instance, some expats report challenges in finding English-speaking doctors or navigating the system efficiently. While private healthcare is an option, it comes at an added cost. Seven, taxes, a complicated affair. Let's talk about money. Americans living abroad still need to file US taxes, and depending on their situation, they might owe money back home. Portugal has a tax treaty with the US, but navigating dual tax obligations can be complex and stressful. Some Americans feel the financial and bureaucratic burden isn't worth the lifestyle perks. The honeymoon phase ends. Number 8. End of honeymoon phase. This is quite universal when you talk about moving abroad. Yes, you will agree. The honeymoon phase doesn't last forever. At first, everything feels new, adventurous, and exciting, but over time, challenges like missing family, struggling to adapt, or feeling disconnected from the local culture can weigh some down heavily. And so, for some Americans, the idea of living in Portugal doesn't match the reality, and combining every other thing, the dream, simply loses its luster. So what can we learn from all this? Well, before you think this video is all doom and gloom for Portugal, let's step back a little bit to assimilate. First things first, moving abroad is a bold and brave decision. It is meant to force you to reevaluate your priorities, learn new skills, and adapt in ways you never imagined. For many, the challenges of living in Portugal are outweighed by the rewards, the stunning landscapes, the sense of safety, and the slower pace of life. So, what's the takeaway here? Moving abroad, whether to Portugal or anywhere else, requires careful thought and planning. It's not about escaping problems in your home country, but about embracing a new way of life, with all its pros and cons. For those considering a move to Portugal, my advice is, do your research. Visit Portugal for an extended period before moving to stay. Try to learn the language. Even a basic grasp of Portuguese will make your life significantly easier. Have a financial plan. Understand the costs involved, from rent to taxes. Embrace the culture. The more you adapt, the more fulfilling your experience will be. So, what is my final thought on why are Americans moving out of Portugal? Well, I will say the reasons are as varied as the people themselves, ranging from financial strain to cultural differences to personal circumstances. But for every person who leaves, there are others who stay and thrive, and still there are those who are still flocking in because there is no doubt Portugal is a beautiful place. And Portugal isn't just a destination, it's a lifestyle. And like any lifestyle, it's not for everyone. But for those who find their rhythm here, it's a place like no other. So, over to you, what do you think? Would you consider moving to Portugal? Or, if you've already lived there, what was your experience? Let's talk about it in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content just like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.